Do you believe in what you can't see? Sometimes the scariest things are hiding in the shadows, just waiting to be revealed. If you've ever felt that chill when the lights go out, you're in the right place. Today, I'm taking you to a world where the real and the supernatural collide. But before we begin, tell me in the comments, what's the scariest moment you've ever experienced? If you're brave enough, hold tight, because this story might be more real than you think. I still remember the day I met Emily. She was exactly what I had always wished for: charming, intelligent, and full of life. We started dating quickly, and it seemed like nothing could go wrong. However, after some time, I began to notice that something was off. Emily had a peculiar habit. She avoided looking at herself in the mirror. Every time we passed one, she would avert her gaze or quickly move away. At first, I thought it was just an eccentricity, maybe some insecurity she had. But the oddities didn't stop there. She started to look sick. Her skin grew paler, her eyes darkened, and her movements became slow, as if she was exhausted. When I expressed my concerns, she would always brush them off, insisting that she was fine. Then, one night, Emily told me she needed to visit a friend out of town for a few days. I was worried but respected her decision. I told her I would miss her and asked her to let me know when she arrived safely. But she never did. Days passed, and I heard nothing from her. My messages and calls went unanswered. After almost a week of silence, I panicked. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to call the friend she mentioned. When I finally got through, I was met with silence on the other end of the line. "Emily," the friend responded, perplexed. "Emily died 3 years ago." My world collapsed. How could this be? I had been with her, talked to her, touched her. Nothing made sense. For days, I was tormented, trying to understand what was happening. I began to question my sanity, but something inside me knew there was an explanation, no matter how terrifying it might be. One night, I returned home, exhausted and disturbed. The apartment was steeped in an unsettling silence, and then I heard it. A faint tapping sound coming from the bathroom. My heart raced. I knew I was alone, but those taps were as clear as day. Terrified, I approached the door and heard a whisper, faint but unmistakable. Desperate for answers, I sought out a medium known in the city. She agreed to help me, though she warned that what we might find could be disturbing. When we returned to my apartment, she fell silent for a moment before telling me that there were 2 spirits. There a young woman and a man. The woman, she said, was connected to me, but the man was a mystery. The medium advised me to leave the apartment and never return. And that's exactly what I did. I moved far away, trying to get on with my life. But the truth about Emily still haunts me. I never figured out who the man was or what they wanted from me. All I know is that I will never go back to that place. Some doors, once opened, should never be crossed again. You know when life seems to be going smoothly, and then suddenly, something strange happens. It all started pretty normally. I met Rachel at one of those friends gatherings. She was the kind of person who stands out without much effort. You know, that smile that lights up a room. That was her. We talked a lot that night, and I remember thinking that it had been a while since I connected with someone so quickly. She was a widow and soon told me that she had 2 kids, Jack and Emma, aged 6 and 4. The way she talked about her kids really drew me in. It was clear that she did everything she could to be a good mother, despite all the hardships she had faced since her husband passed away. Over time, we started going out more often, and the relationship became serious. I liked the kids, and they seemed to accept me pretty well. Jack, the oldest, was full of energy and loved to talk about the games he played with his friends at school. Sometimes I would take him to school in the morning, and he would get all excited telling me about the previous day, with that enthusiasm only a kid can have. On weekends, we would go out for ice cream or head to the park, and it felt like we were forming a little family. It was around this time that I decided to move into Rachel's house. Everything seemed to fit perfectly, like it was the natural next step. The daily routine was good, the kids were happy. Rachel also seemed more at ease, as if a part of her that had been on hold had finally found peace. But that sense of normalcy didn't last long. One night, the kids were already asleep, and we decided to enjoy some time alone. We went to the bedroom, opened a bottle of wine, and started talking. We were sitting on the bed, leaning against the headboard, the soft light from the bedside lamp gently illuminating the room. The wine helped us relax, and the conversation flowed easily, accompanied by quiet laughter. The house was completely silent, the kind of silence that only happens when the kids are finally asleep. Suddenly, a loud, sharp noise cut through the air, like something had broken. It was so unexpected that we both jumped, spilling some of the wine. My heart raced, and the sound echoed in my head for a few seconds. The kind of sound you know you shouldn't hear in a quiet house at that hour. I looked over at the dresser, where a few ornaments were carefully arranged, and saw that one of the small ceramic vases had fallen to the floor, shattering into pieces. Rachel was frozen, her gaze fixed on the dresser. But what really sent a chill down my spine was what happened next. Before I could say anything, the picture of her late husband, which had been half hidden behind the ornaments, was thrown off the dresser. It wasn't a simple slip or fall. It was as if something had pushed it with force, sending it flying a good distance. I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me a few years ago. At the time, it seemed like just a bizarre coincidence. But what started as a simple message on my phone turned into a night of pure terror. After moving to a new city, I rented a small house in a quiet neighborhood. It was the perfect place for someone who enjoys a bit of peace after a long day. That night, as usual, I made dinner and decided to relax while watching a movie. Everything seemed normal until I received a message from an unknown number on my phone. The message simply said, "Good evening. I know where you are." I thought it was some sort of prank, so I ignored it and went on with my night. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. At first, they were short and meaningless, but soon they started to get more personal. "You got home early today. I like the color of your dress." These messages began to make me uneasy. That night, while I was watching TV, I received a message that made me freeze. "You should close your windows. It's cold outside." I looked at the window next to me, which was open, and panic began to set in. I hurried to close all the windows and lock the doors, trying to convince myself it was just a bad joke. That same night, I received one last message. "Open the door. I'm waiting." That's when I saw the door handle turn, and since the door was locked, he started knocking. "Open the door. I'm waiting." My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and called the police. While I waited, I heard footsteps coming from the garage, followed by an eerie silence. That's when I remembered I hadn't locked the door leading to the garage. Fear paralyzed me for a moment, but I quickly ran and locked myself in the bedroom, hoping the police would arrive in time. When the police finally arrived, they found a man hiding in the garage, trying to conceal himself among some boxes. To my shock, it was a new neighbor I had seen once or twice before. He was dirty and disheveled, with a look in his eyes that made my blood run cold. As he was handcuffed and taken away, he gave me a hateful glare so intense that it made me shudder. Throughout the investigation, he didn't say a single word, and the authorities never figured out why he was stalking me. Since that night, I've never felt completely safe in my own home again. It might seem like an exaggeration, but that experience taught me to be much more careful about who I let near me. Not every stranger has good intentions, and danger might be closer than we think. My friends and I decided to take advantage of the amusement park that was in town. The atmosphere was lively. Flashing lights, the sweet smell of popcorn and cotton candy in the air, and the distant sound of adrenaline-fueled screams from the roller coaster. We explored several attractions, laughing and competing, until our eyes fixed on the haunted house ride, an old attraction that seemed out of place among the others. My friends were excited, making jokes about how silly the ride would be. But there was something in the air that made me uneasy. The haunted ride was isolated, hidden in the darkest part of the park, like a relic forgotten from a past era. Even so, I didn't want to seem scared, so I followed the group. The creaky wooden doors closed behind us, and we settled into the wooden cars that smelled of mold and rust. Soon, the car began to move. Entering the darkness. The lights flickered, and the sound of chains and artificial screams echoed around us. Everything seemed something meant to provoke laughter, not fear. But as we moved forward, the atmosphere changed. The darkness around us became denser, almost tangible, as if it were closing in on us. Suddenly, all the lights went out. The car continued on its path, now in complete silence. The artificial sounds ceased, and we were swallowed by total darkness. My friends' laughter died, replaced by a growing tension. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. Something was wrong, something that wasn't part of the ride's script. The feeling of being watched became overwhelming. A faint light finally appeared ahead, revealing a small, dimly lit room. There was a large, dirty mirror on the opposite wall, reflecting our distorted images. The car stopped, and the silence was replaced by the heavy sound of our breathing. I looked into the mirror, and something made me freeze. There, in the reflection, a hooded figure appeared behind us. Its outline was vague, but the dark hood concealed a face I couldn't make out. I immediately turned around, but there was no one there. My friends noticed too, and the silence between us became terrifying. But what really terrified me was the certainty that the figure wasn't part of the ride. There was something genuinely evil about it, something that couldn't be explained as a simple special effect or illusion. The presence of that figure was intense, almost palpable, as if the evil it radiated was real, far beyond a simple amusement park prank. Before we could react, the car shot forward, pulling us out of that room with sudden speed. The sound returned, but it was no longer the artificial noise from before. It felt real, as if something was running alongside us, something invisible but present. We felt the weight of something watching us, chasing us, but we couldn't see anything. My friend started screaming, and I felt panic rising inside me. All I wanted was to get out of there. When we finally emerged from the darkness back at the entrance of the haunted house ride, we were completely silent. No one laughed, no one made jokes. We just got out of the car and walked away from the ride as fast as possible without looking back. We knew that something had followed us that night, something that wasn't part of the show, something that was real. In the following days, I tried to forget what I had seen, but that hooded figure continued to haunt me. Disturbing dreams kept me awake, and the feeling of being watched never left. I talked to my friends, but none of them wanted to discuss what had happened. Everyone preferred to ignore it, to pretend that nothing had happened. Even so, I needed answers. I went back to the park, alone, weeks later, hoping to understand what really happened. When I got to the haunted house ride, I noticed that something was wrong. The ride was closed off, marked with yellow off-limits tape. I asked one of the employees, and he just mumbled something about an incident, without giving any details. To this day, I don't know if what we saw was real, or if it was just a very well-planned trick by the park. But considering it was a run-down park in a small town, that seems unlikely. The feeling that the presence was genuinely evil has never left me.